I did not volunteer for myth. I volunteered for a mission with a name that had already killed men before it began. If you are reading this, you are not supposed to be. That means two things are true at the same time. Someone failed, and someone decided the failure was necessary. My call sign in 1980 was Echo 6. My legal name is burned out of this copy. I will not restore it. This is a confession. It is also a classified after-action report reconstructed from memory, notes I hid in my boot lining, and fragments of radio traffic that should not exist. Operation Eagle Claw was supposed to reach Tehran and bring hostages home. What we found beneath the desert was not Tehran. It was something older than the plan, older than the base, older than the lie that the desert is empty, and it did not want us there. Recovered field log, handwritten transcription. Time, April 19th, 1980/local unknown. Location, Desert 1 staging site, designation later altered. Weather, cold, dry, fine particulate haze. Note, dust has a metallic taste. Persistent, the first sign was a sound. Not loud, not a voice. A vibration under everything, like a generator running 2 rooms away. Except there were no rooms, just open desert and a horizon that looked cut with a blade. At Desert 1, the air tasted like sand and aviation fuel. JP, for clung to the back of my throat. Every breath felt abrasive. Rotors thumped in the distance, then closer, the rhythm of helicopters fighting the night air. The C-130s sat like crouched animals under blackout discipline. Red lenses over flashlights. Whispered hand signals. The world reduced to small cones of light and the weight of gear. We were trained to treat uncertainty like weather, acknowledge it, then move. But this was not normal uncertainty. The thrum was constant. It rode up through the soles of my boots and into my teeth. It made my jaw ache as if I'd been clenching all day. I checked my men. Sergeant Laird, team medic, kept flexing his fingers as if they were numb. Chief Warren Haskins, pilot liaison, kept tilting his head like he was trying to catch a distant transmission. Staff Sergeant Monk Rivera Breacher had a habit of tapping his thumb on his magazine when waiting. He was doing it now, but slower, as if the rhythm had been chosen for him. I put a hand on his shoulder. He stopped. His eyes met mine through NVG glow. He looked embarrassed, like he'd been caught praying. I leaned in close, so only he could hear. No rhythms. He frowned. What? Just no rhythms. He nodded without understanding. None of us did yet. We were in the pre-launch chaos when the first anomaly hit comms. Echo 6, check your fill. Keen, our comms tech. Attached, said over the net. His voice came through with a wobble, a faint warble under the words. Say again, I answered. A burst of static. Not random. It pulsed. Steady, evenly spaced. I listened harder than I should have. The pulse felt like it was inside my skull, not my headset. Keen tried switching frequencies, cycling presets, reseating connectors. His hands were quick, professional. His face wasn't. He looked pale under red light, sweat beading at his temples despite the cold. It's not the radios, he said, too quietly. It's the air. I wanted to tell him to focus, to keep it together, but I felt it too, a pressure that made my vision subtly shimmer, as if the desert heat had returned at night. Then the storm hit. Dust, rotor wash, sand in eyes and teeth, the world turning into grit and roaring engines. Eagle Claw was already breaking. Later, historians will tell you the mission failed because of mechanical issues and a collision and a sandstorm. That is true. It is also incomplete. Because after the collision, after the fireball, after the screaming and the frantic accountability checks, after we abandoned aircraft and ran with what we could carry, we were redirected, not by command on the radio, by command in person. A man arrived in a vehicle with no markings and headlights taped down. He wore a plain flight suit with no patches and carried a sealed envelope inside a plastic pouch. He moved like someone who had never been shot at but had seen men die anyway. He did not introduce himself. He did not need to. He walked straight to the senior officer and spoke close, so the wind and dust would carry nothing. Then the senior officer looked at us at the scattered teams, at the burned wreckage, at the men whose faces reflected firelight, and said words I will never forget. We are not exfiltrating directly. We have a secondary tasking. No one argued, not because we agreed, because in that moment we were all running on momentum and shock, and the military machine does not care how your mind feels when it gives you another order. We loaded into the remaining aircraft. The cabin stank of smoke and sweat and sand. My gear was coated in grit. Every strap rubbed raw. My mouth tasted like burned wiring. The thrum came with us. It was stronger in the aircraft, as if the metal skin amplified it. I pressed 2 fingers to my throat and felt my pulse trying to match it. I forced myself to breathe irregularly, to break the pattern. Laird noticed. "What's wrong with you?" he asked. "Nothing," I lied. I looked away so he wouldn't see fear forming. We landed before dawn at a place that did not exist on any map I had ever been shown. No lights except shielded strips under eaves. No tower. No welcoming crew. Just a slab of concrete cut into desert and a low complex of buildings that looked like storage. The wind was colder here. It smelled faintly metallic, like wet coins. As we disembarked, the man with the envelope stood waiting with a small escort. Their weapons were carried low, muzzles down, but their posture was not relaxed. They were not guarding us. They were guarding something behind us. We were marched into a hangar, with the doors closed immediately. The sound of the latches hitting home made my stomach tighten. Inside, the air was warmer, dry, recycled. It smelled of hydraulic fluid and antiseptic. A projector screen hung against the wall. A map appeared. Not Iran. Nevada. A red circle around a familiar name everyone pretends not to know. Groom Lake. A second circle further south, smaller. Then a third marker, no name, just coordinates. The man finally spoke. "This is compartmented under Orion Sigma. You will not repeat what you see here outside this room. You will not write it. You will not record it." His gaze swept across us like a searchlight. "Tonight, you are not here for Tehran. Tonight, you are here because Eagle Claw created the noise we needed." Haskins stared. "Noise!" The man's mouth tightened. "Cover." My chest went cold. He clicked to the next slide. An image of a borehole cut through desert rock. A diagram of layers. Then a cavity. The cavity walls were smooth in the image, too smooth, like glass. An anomaly was located beneath this region during seismic survey work, he said. We believed it to be a natural void. It is not. He paused, as if measuring whether we deserved the next sentence. Something was built down there. Sergeant Laird asked, "Built by who?" The man looked at him for a long moment. "By something that does not want to be found." We were issued different gear. Not standard. Respirators with additional filtration cartridges. Ear protection rated for low-frequency attenuation. Thick pads that sealed tight. A small device clipped to our vests. A vibration monitor with a red indicator and a warning label. Do not match rhythm. No explanation. Just orders. We rolled out in vehicles with blacked-out windows. The desert outside was gray-blue, the sky paling on the horizon. The sun was coming. But it felt like the day didn't want to arrive. As we drove, the thrum grew stronger again. It seemed tied to proximity, like a radio beacon you couldn't tune out. Monk Rivera started tapping his thumb again. This time it was more precise. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I slapped his hand hard enough to sting through gloves. He stared at me, anger flashing. "What is your problem?" I leaned close. "Stop making patterns." His mouth opened to argue, then closed. He swallowed. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" He looked past me toward the window. Someone humming. I listened. There was nothing. Just engine noise and the low thrum under reality. But when I told myself there was nothing, my mind filled the gap anyway. A faint melody that wasn't there. My skin crawled. The entry point was hidden under a structure that looked like a weather station. A squat building. Antennas. Solar panels. Anemometer. Inside was a steel door, new paint, fresh weld seams around the frame. The men escorting us keyed in a code and turned a wheel. The door swung open on silent hinges. Cold air spilled out, carrying the smell of damp stone and burned electronics. Ozone. We stepped into a stairwell that descended into darkness. The walls were concrete, but layered in patches like repeated repairs. Halfway down, the first body appeared. A man in a technician's jumpsuit slumped against the wall. His hands were up near his ears. Fingers dug into flesh as if he had tried to tear something out. His eyes were open and unfocused, staring at a point beyond the ceiling. A thin trail of dried blood ran from his ear canal down his neck. Laird crouched, checked for pulse. "He's gone," he said. No one asked how. We all looked at the ear blood and understood one possibility. Pressure. Sound. The thrum under our boots intensified as we descended, as if the stairwell itself was a conduit. The vibration monitor on my vest blinked yellow, then red. It emitted a small haptic pulse. A warning. Break rhythm. Break rhythm. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a corridor reinforced with steel ribs and cable trays. Lights were on but dim. Emergency lighting. Every few fixtures flickered in a slow, uneven pulse. The air was colder, heavier. There were motes floating in our headlamp beams. Fine particulate that glittered faintly, not like dust, but like something with charge. One of the escort guards raised a handheld counter and scanned the air. Not a Geiger. Something else. He muttered into his mask. "Levels are climbing." Sergeant Laird asked, "Climbing what?" The guard didn't answer. He just walked faster. We reached a blast door half open. 2 security men lay in the gap as if they had been thrown there and then carefully arranged. Again, no obvious trauma. No blood except the ears. Their rifles lay beside them. Safety still on. They had died without firing. That is not normal. Even the most disciplined men fire when something rushes them. These men had not even tried. Monk Rivera whispered, "What did they see?" I didn't answer, because I didn't want to feed the question. The thrum changed. Not louder, more structured, like a signal. The monitor on my vest vibrated again, stronger, a pulse that matched the thrum. My stomach flipped with sudden nausea. My fingers tingled, and then I realized my breathing had fallen into time with it. In, out, in, out. I forced myself into an irregular pattern. Sharp inhales, long exhales, breaking the synchronization. The nausea eased slightly. That's when the dread turned into something I could name. This thing was trying to couple with us. Not spiritually. Physically. We entered an antechamber carved into bedrock. Equipment carts. Spools of fiber optic cable. Acoustic panels stacked like coffins. A whiteboard leaned against the wall. Someone had scrawled in thick marker. Infrasound entrainment. Human subjects unavoidable. Do not speak in cadence. Do not count. Do not hum. Under that, written smaller, shakier, it learns your fear first. My throat tightened. Fear learning is not a phrase used by people who believe they are in control. Beyond the chamber was a vertical shaft with a ladder and a winch line. The escort guard clipped in without hesitation. We followed. As we descended, the air changed again. It smelled like wet metal, like a sealed electronics room that had been abandoned for decades. Halfway down, my light caught something embedded in the rock. Not natural. A smooth surface, dark and slightly reflective, running in a line like a buried panel. Waveguide? Composite? It disappeared into the stone, too perfectly integrated to be an accident. The thrum came through it like it was designed to. The ladder vibrated. My teeth buzzed. At the bottom, we stepped into a vault, and I understood why they had built so many layers of concrete and steel. Because the vault had been built around something that was already there. In the center was a hatch collar, oval, thick, ringed with locking mechanisms. Surrounding it, sensors, dampers, pressure valves, and along one wall, body bags. 8. One unzipped, a technician inside, face turned slightly away as if he had died trying not to look. His head was wrapped in gauze over the ears, then plastic, then tape, as if someone had tried to keep sound from reaching him. or keep something from leaving him. The escort guard stepped forward and held up a small recorder, the kind that logged vibration data. His hands trembled. He set it on the floor near the hatch, then backed away quickly like it was a snake. Sergeant Laird asked, "What is it?" The guard's voice was muffled. "It's a system." "What kind?" The guard stared at the hatch collar. "A cognitive field generator." Those words hit my brain like ice water. Not a weapon in the normal sense. A weapon aimed at the part of you that decides what is real. The guard continued, "We call it the choir." Monk Rivera let out a quiet, involuntary breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "The choir," he repeated, as if testing the name. The vibration monitor on his vest pulse read. I saw his fingers twitch. He was about to tap. I grabbed his wrist and held it tight until he looked at me. He looked ashamed again, and afraid. The hatch collar moved. It was subtle at first, a fraction of an inch rotation on one of the locking rings. No one touched it. We all froze. The escort guard lifted his weapon. Sergeant Laird whispered, "Is it supposed to do that?" The guard shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "It is not supposed to do anything." The ring rotated again. Slow, deliberate, like fingers working a dial. The thrum shifted, and for the first time I felt it as direction. Pressure pushing from the hatch toward my chest. My helmet strap pressed into my chin. Sweat cooled under my armor. The fluorescent lights above us flickered in response. Then my headset crackled. A voice came through, faint and distorted. "Mason, you can stop now." It was my mother's voice. My mother had never been on a military net in her life. She died when I was 12. I felt my vision narrow. My throat tightened. I did not answer. I could not, because part of me wanted the relief of responding. That is how it starts. The guard barked. No comms. "Ignore it." Sergeant Laird turned slightly toward me, eyes wide behind his goggles. "You heard that too?" he asked. I shook my head once. A lie, but a necessary one, because panic is a pattern too. The comms died completely seconds later. Not just our radios. The lights flickered out, then came back on emergency power, dim red strips along the floor. The only steady illumination was our headlamps. The hatch ring rotated faster. Another ring followed. 3 rings moving in sequence, like a combination being dialed. The vibration monitor on my vest emitted rapid pulses now, almost frantic. Break rhythm. Break rhythm. Monk Rivera took a step forward, without realizing it. His face was slack, like sleepwalking. Laird grabbed his arm. Monk jerked free with sudden strength and hissed, "Let me listen." That sentence snapped something in me. I moved in and put Monk against the wall hard. His helmet knocked concrete. He blinked, confusion and anger fighting in his eyes. "What are you doing?" he demanded. I leaned close. "You are not going near it." He swallowed. His fingers twitched. It's singing." There was no song, only the thrum. But my brain filled it anyway. A harmony that made my skin prickle. A chord that felt like someone's hands on the back of my neck. The hatch opened enough to vent cold air upward. With the air came more of those motes. Fine gray particulate that drifted in slow spirals. Not random. Structured. Sergeant Laird raised his flashlight and watched the motes move. His voice dropped. "That is not airflow." The escort guard lifted his handheld sensor again. His eyes widened. He backed away. "Levels just spiked," he whispered. "Spiked what?" Laird demanded. The guard swallowed. "Conductivity. EM coupling." I didn't understand the technical wording, but I understood the fear. The dust was not inert. It was part of the system. A medium, a way to carry signal. The hatch ring clicked. Released. The collar shifted. And from below, something moved. A shape climbed up into the light. Not a man. Not a classic animal. It moved like a deep-sea thing that had never needed to be beautiful. Segmented body. Jointed limbs that folded backward at angles that made my joints ache in sympathy. A matte membrane stretched over structural ribs, giving it the look of carbon fiber coated in oil. Where a face should be was a cluster of pits and smooth domes. Sensor rays, not eyes. It paused at the hatch lip, head angled, as if listening. Then the thrum changed and the creature vibrated in response. Like a tuning fork, like a tool receiving instruction. It reached one limb out, slow, precise, and touched the hatch collar. A hidden latch clicked. The next ring rotated. Monk Rivera whispered, "It's opening it." The escort guard's weapon rose. He fired. The round hit the creature's sensor cluster. It shuddered, but did not fall. Instead, it anchored itself to the floor with hooked appendages and released a puff of gray particulate. The dust cloud hung in the air, shimmering faintly in. Our beams! My stomach tightened. Even through the respirator, I could taste it, metallic, bitter. The thrum surged. My vision blurred at the edges. Sergeant Laird stumbled, catching himself on a cart. He whispered, "I feel sick." Breathe irregular. "I ordered." He tried. His chest hitched. His breathing fell into rhythm. Anyway, the system wanted it. The system was patient. More creatures climbed. 2, 3, 5. They moved with coordination, not attack frenzy. They spread along walls and equipment, positioning, it seems, cables, sensor nodes. They were not hunting us. They were working. Maintenance units. Actuators. Hands. One of them latched onto a cable tray and vibrated it. The tray hummed. The hum matched the thrum. The hum crawled into my teeth. My hand shook on my rifle. I fired controlled bursts into joint clusters, aiming to disable movement. Rounds punched into matte bodies, releasing more dust. The chamber filled with it like smoke made of conductive ash. The creatures did not retreat. They adjusted. 2 shifted to shield another as it continued turning the hatch ring. A third moved toward our comms relay case and tore it open with a limb that ended in a hardened tool surface. Not a claw. It was dismantling us, piece by piece, without anger, without urgency, like we were an obstacle in an equation. Sergeant Laird screamed. Not loud, muffled inside his mask, but raw. He tore at his ear protection. "Make it stop," he begged. His eyes were wide. Blood seeped from the corners like tears. I grabbed his hands. "Do not remove it." He shook his head violently. "It is inside my head." The thrum shifted again, and I heard a voice, clear as if someone stood behind me. "Let him breathe." It was my own voice. That broke me more than my mother's had, because it meant the system had already learned my tone. It could mimic me. It could wear me. Laird's fingers found the respirator seal. He ripped it loose with desperate strength. He inhaled deep. His shoulders dropped, relief washing over his face for 1 second. Then blood poured from his nose in a sudden hot stream. His ears began bleeding steadily. He convulsed, hard enough to slam his head against the floor. The sound was wet, final. His body kicked twice. Stopped. The gray dust clung to his face in a thin coat like frost. I stared at my medic's dead eyes and felt something in my mind try to rationalize it. He cannot keep up. Optimization. I hated that thought. It did not feel like mine. Monk Rivera stood over Laird's body, shaking. His rifle hung low. He whispered, almost reverent, "It's beautiful." The same word as before, on a different man's mouth. A contagion. I shoved him. "Move." He blinked at me slowly like I was interrupting prayer. A creature approached Monk, limb extended, not to strike, to touch. Monk leaned toward it. I fired, a burst that hit the creature's torso. Dust erupted. The creature collapsed, but another immediately took its place, stepping into the gap without hesitation. They were coordinated. Replace a unit. Continue the action. The hatch ring rotated. Unlocked. The collar shifted wider. Cold air rolled out in a stronger stream. From below, something larger scraped against composite walls. Not a roar, a mechanical scrape, a system assembling. My spine tightened. I realized then, those small units were not the main threat. They were the crew. Whatever was below was the machine. The larger entity rose into view, like a cluster of segments locking together. Not one organism. Many units forming a modular framework. Multiple sensor heads, multiple limb arrays, a body made of bodies. It climbed with slow certainty, using the shaft walls as rungs, joints folding at wrong angles that made it impossibly efficient. When it reached the lip, it turned its sensor array toward us. Attention fell on us like weight. The thrum hit my chest like a physical blow. Monk Rivera's knees buckled. He dropped his rifle and began to hum. Softly, a simple tune my brain tried to complete. My monitor pulsed frantic red. Break rhythm. Break rhythm. I shoved Monk's mouth closed with my gloved hand. His eyes rolled upward, tears leaking. He tried to pull my hand away. The larger entity extended a limb toward him. A tool end, hardened and shaped to transmit vibration precisely. I fired into it. Rounds sparked off dense material. Minimal effect. The limb struck the floor. Concrete cracked outward in a spider pattern, not from force alone, from resonance, fatigue failure. Like a bridge shaken apart by wind, the entity struck again. Another crack. The vault walls had been repaired, and repaired because this had happened before. It was not escaping by brute strength. It was unbuilding containment by vibration, by precise coupling at structural resonant frequencies. Engineering. Cold. Patient. My mind flashed an image unwanted of the desert above, surface concrete fracturing, and the thrum spreading through ground into highways, into power lines, into cities. Not a monster walking out. A signal leaking out. A pattern infecting minds. I tasted bile. Our radios were dead. The escort guard screamed into his mic anyway. Desperation overriding discipline. No answer. The gray dust swirled with every vibration pulse, aligning in subtle waves like iron filings around a magnet. Haskins, the pilot liaison, backed toward the ladder shaft. His face was rigid with fear. He whispered, "We need to leave. We need to leave now." The larger entity turned slightly toward him. Just a slight adjustment, as if it had marked him. Haskins froze. His eyes softened. He took one slow step toward it. I grabbed him. He looked at me with calm annoyance. "Why are you fighting it?" he asked. His voice was not his voice. It was too even, too sure. "It can fix you," he said softly. I felt something in my head lean toward that sentence like a starving man toward bread. Fix you. No more fear. No more sand in teeth. No more guilt. Just surrender to pattern. I bit the inside of my cheek. Hard. Pain snapped me back. "Move," I hissed. Haskins blinked, confusion flickering. Then the thrum surged and his confusion melted into calm again. He reached up and pulled off his ear protection. I slapped his hands away. Too late. He ripped his respirator seal. Inhaled. Relief on his face for half a second. Then blood erupted from his nose and mouth in a violent gush. He collapsed, choking, eyes wide, hands clawing at the dust-coated floor. The larger entity did not look away. It did not react. It simply continued vibrating the vault structure. Because Haskins was not a victory. He was a side effect. I made the decision that ended my team. I chose to use explosives. Monk Rivera was the breacher. His charges were designed for doors, not buried anomalies. But explosives are simple truth in a world of lies. I pulled Monk away from the entity with brute force. He fought me weakly, humming through clenched teeth, eyes unfocused. "Monk," I shouted into his faceplate. "Charges. Now." He blinked. For a moment, the soldier returned. He nodded, shaky, and fumbled with his kit. He placed a charge near the hatch collar, hands trembling, fingers moving like they were being guided. He started tapping again. 3 taps, pause. 2 taps on the detonator housing. My monitor screamed with vibration pulses. I grabbed his hands and held them still. "Look at me," I said. "Stay with me." He swallowed, tears in his eyes. "I can hear my sister," he whispered. "She's calling me." I felt my throat tighten. I didn't ask questions. I didn't comfort. I just shoved him behind a reinforced cart and primed the detonator myself. My hands were steady because fear had burned away everything else. The larger entity extended a limb toward the charge. Not to stop it, to touch it, to learn it. I detonated. The blast punched my chest and slammed dust into every corner. Light flashed. My ears rang even through protection. The concrete floor jumped under me. When my vision cleared, the hatch collar was cracked, warped. The larger entity had been torn apart into segments, pieces twitching, dust pouring from ruptured bodies. But the thrum did not stop. It changed. It became sharper, more aggressive, like an instrument retuning itself after being struck. The surviving small units moved immediately to the broken segments, connecting, locking, reassembling. They were repairing. They were adapting. And the broken hatch collar now gaped wider, containment compromised. My blast had not sealed the problem. It had opened it. We ran, not in formation, not clean, just running toward the ladder shaft with adrenaline burning in our limbs and lungs. The creatures did not sprint after us. They did something worse. They vibrated the ladder. The metal rungs hummed under my hands. The hum matched the thrum. The thrum matched my heartbeat. My fingers tingled. My grip weakened. I forced myself to climb irregularly, skip a rung, then too quick, then pause. Break rhythm. Break rhythm. Behind me, Monk Rivera climbed. He was shaking, breathing ragged. The thrum surged. He stopped. He looked down into the vault, like a man staring at a warm bed after weeks in the cold. He smiled faintly. "It's singing," he whispered. Then he let go. He fell backward into the shaft. He did not scream. He fell with a kind of peace that turned my stomach inside out. His body hit the bottom with a dull impact that vibrated up the ladder into my hands. The vibration felt like a message, a reminder. You can stop fighting. I climbed harder, tears running under my goggles, rage and fear mixing into something I could barely contain. Above, the corridor lights flickered in pulses now, matching the thrum. The building itself was becoming a resonator. When I reached the top, the escort guard who had brought us down was waiting. He raised his weapon. For a second, I thought he was going to shoot me to contain the leak. Then I saw his eyes. Soft, hollow. He smiled, and he began to hum the same tune Monk had. I did not hesitate. I fired once. Center mass. He dropped. The hum stopped with him, but the thrum remained, steady beneath the world. I stepped over his body and ran up the stairwell. The air grew warmer. The ozone smell faded, but the vibration followed, like it found a new carrier. Me, on the surface. The desert was bright with morning. The sky was pale blue, innocent. The facility personnel met me with sealed suits and rifles. They did not ask what happened. They already knew enough. They took my weapon. They stripped my gear. They sprayed me with chemicals that burned my skin through fabric. They scraped gray dust from my boots into sealed containers. They moved me into isolation. White noise pumped through speakers day and night. No spoken questions. Only written prompts slid under a door. Did you hear voices? Did you hum? Did you count? Did you feel compelled to approach? I wrote the truth until my hand cramped. Yes, 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 yes. On day 3, a man in a lab coat entered wearing ear protection thicker than mine. He carried a clipboard and did not sit. He wrote one sentence and held it up for me to read. "You are still entrained." My stomach dropped. He flipped to another page. "The pattern will fade if you do not feed it." He stared at me for a long time, then wrote, "Do not think about the sound." I laughed once, dry, humorless, then stopped, because even laughter can fall into rhythm. Weeks later, they released me into the world with paperwork and threats and a new identity. They told me Eagle Claw was a failure and would be remembered as such. They told me the rest was classified, never happened, would never be acknowledged. They were wrong about one part. It did happen, and it did not stay buried. Because sometimes at night, when everything is quiet, I feel it again, that low thrum under silence. Not in my ears, in my teeth, in my chest, in the spaces between thoughts. And when I'm tired, when my guard drops, my fingers start to tap on their own. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. 3 taps. The first time it happened after I got out, I woke up to find my hand tapping against the wall beside my bed. The wall was humming faintly. Not with sound, with vibration, like the building had learned it too. I pressed my ear to the drywall and felt the pattern traveling through studs, through wiring, through the bones of a normal house in a normal town. That is how it spreads. Not by walking out, by coupling with everything that can resonate. Metal, concrete, power lines, and minds. If you have read this far, you have already built a shape in your head, a template. You have already imagined the thrum. You may think you are safe because you are reading words, not listening to audio. You are not safe because the brain does not require sound to rehearse a pattern. It only requires attention. So here's the only instruction that matters, and I am putting it in the plainest language I can. If you ever feel a low vibration in quiet places, if you ever catch yourself tapping a rhythm you did not choose, if you ever hear a melody in static or in the hum of appliances, do not lean in. Do not try to identify it. Do not share it. Break the pattern immediately. Stand up. Move. Make noise that does not match it. Because what we found beneath the desert did not need to climb out to reach us. It only needed a failed mission, a storm, a fire, and a handful of soldiers to carry its first notes into the world. And once a choir has a human throat, it does not stop singing. The last image I have from that place is burned into my mind like a flashbulb. Not the fireball at Desert One. Not the bodies in the vault. It is a small thing. A decontamination drum rolling across a concrete floor under harsh fluorescent light. A thin smear of gray dust leaking from the lid. A guard's glove accidentally dragging through it. And the dust, fine, glittering, shifting into a crescent on his glove as if responding to a vibration no one admitted was there. Aligning, organizing, like it recognized the shape of a human hand. Like it was choosing where to live next.